Hello, everyone, and welcome back to NeuroAlchemy, the Brain Body Healing Podcast. This is the space where science meets soul, where we slow conversations down enough to understand what is happening inside the human system, and where healing is explored as a multi-dimensional journey. I'm your host, Dr. Sarah Young. I am a functional and integrative medicine practitioner, previously a speech language pathologist, and much of my work centers on helping people reconnect the dots between the brain, the nervous system, emotional experience, and identity. One of the things that we do intentionally on this podcast is slow things down and create clarity, because when things feel overwhelming and confusing, clarity creates safety, and that opens the door for more opportunities for healing, for reconnection, for reflection, and ultimately, that's where the change is allowed to occur. Today's conversation is centered around something deeply human: learning how to feel safe in your own body again. If you've ever felt disconnected from yourself, unsure of your worth, or caught in patterns of overgiving, overthinking, or staying small to stay safe, this conversation is for you. Everyone, take a breath. Remember, you don't have to rush through this process. Today, I'm joined by Ela, and you'll just have to look at her last name because I did try to pronounce it. Can you pronounce it for us, Ela?
Szilvassy.
Very good. Thank you so much. Her work is rooted in safety, embodiment, and authenticity. Her personal journey began with learning how to read the room, how to stay small, and prioritize others in order to feel safe. And over time, that evolved into a process of reclaiming her voice, reconnecting with her body, and building a more grounded sense of self. And her work now centers on emotional freedom techniques, also known as EFT, nervous system safety, emotional honesty, and self connection. And what I appreciate about Ella's approach is that it's not about forcing change. It's about creating enough safety for change to naturally emerge. Ella, welcome. We're really glad to have you.
Thank you for having me. I'm super honored to be here and thank you for such a lovely introduction.
Of course, of course. Before we begin to get into the meat of things, I like to just start with a gentle arrival check in. How are you arriving today, whether that's physical, emotional, energetic, or spiritually?
Honestly, more grounded than I'm used to be when I'm this kind of spaces. So I just feel present and grounded. And there's a lot of flow inside of my body. I can't actually find anything bothersome.
That is beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And for all of our listeners out there, just a gentle reminder that however you are showing up with us today is enough. However you are arriving is exactly right for you. Before we go deeper, I'd love to ground out a few terms just to orient the listeners. We often use words like safety, embodiment, or codependency, but those can sometimes mean different things to different people. So let's start here. Ella, when we talk about codependency, how would you explain that in everyday, simple language?
yeah. So, codependency is learned in relationships where there's very little room for you, where you have to feel responsible for other people's needs, where you put others first, where a lot of times people don't even have a sense of self, although that is something that's hard to recognize. You feel like if someone is sad, you feel sad. If someone is happy, you're happy. Like your emotions depend on other people's emotions. Like you would do everything to avoid being rejected, receiving a no, like you do everything to accommodate others, like you will like take bread out of your mouth to give it to someone else. And of course, everything is a scale, and there's a healthy amount of like being selfless, and then there is a unhealthy amount of being selfless, right? But it's basically about putting others first above like others above all else. So when there's really little room for you and for how you feel and for what you need, like that's usually not even on the menu. You don't you don't even recognize that. Or maybe you do and you're frustrated about it, but you're so used to overriding your signals that you don't even know you do it in the first place. How is this landing
Yeah.
with you?
Yeah, that it all starts with awareness, doesn't it? And it reminds me of a meme I was reading earlier today, probably on Facebook. It said, when you stop giving up and abandoning yourself, it no longer matters when other people give up and abandon you, right? And I don't know, with something that you just said, it really like brought that meme really front and center. What do you think about that? How do those relate?
Yeah, definitely. Because like you only feel rejected if one part of you is still afraid of rejection. So, yeah, the moment you stop abandoning yourself and you like cultivate this most, yeah, I say the most intimate relationship with yourself stops, it doesn't even matter anymore whether anyone else rejects you. Because it's just either you like me the way I am or you don't. Like, there's simply no other way. And when you stop shape shifting for others to accept yourself, like this is when you become truly free. This is the kind of freedom that, yeah, this is even how I understand my work. It is about emotional freedom, and this is the kind of internal freedom that can be bought and outsourced. It's something that you have to cultivate within yourself by meeting the parts of you that are still afraid of rejection, afraid of judgment, afraid of, like, you name it, right? But it comes from meeting the parts that are still hurt by past experiences. So, yeah,
Absolutely.
it
Embracing that part, right? Embracing, bringing that self love into the equation, I think is so, so important.
Yeah. And
You,
the way you said it, my whole work is centered around it because, like, if I can give you one sentence about what my work is basically about, even though I feel sad, frustrated, or whatever, I can accept myself anyway. Like, it's the core of this work that we cultivate this self acceptance no matter what, because a lot of people only can only accept themselves with the loving parts of them, right? But how about the part that's frustrated? How about the part that's still hurting? That's the challenging part. But freedom comes from embracing even those parts, like embracing that you can be whole and a work in progress at the same time.
you also mentioned something many people can relate to, that idea of reading the room. Can you help us understand how that becomes a survival skill?
Yeah. So as you were little, right? Or even when you're adult, it doesn't matter. Your nervous system scans for safety all the time. So is this situation, this person, this event, is it safe? So, or do I have to think about like fighting or fleeing the situation? Or if the thing becomes too overwhelming, we basically freeze. Like, it's happening below the level of our conscious awareness, right? And like, it's simply, if you're being punished for being too much, too intense, too existing, too breathing, you name it. I was punished for things that I couldn't even understand. Like, then you start like scanning, like, are they in good mood? Like, what is their facial expression like? Like, did they come home like in a good mood, or do I have to be as small as I can be so that it is less painful for me to survive the environment I am in? Right? It is that simple, basically, although at the time I wasn't aware of that. But like it soon became, because like it then transcends just like the primary family. It's the same dynamic you recreate in adult relationships, where like you shape shift so that you please your partner, so that you please your friends. So like you're never the one who disappoints them. You'd rather like swallow the heaviness of disappointing yourself than disappointing others, right? So Yeah, a lot of times you're not even aware you're doing it. It's just something like I will notice the shift in your behavior, in your energy. Like I'll have a sense that you're in a bad mood before you tell me you're in a bad mood. And sometimes, like I'm not trying to say that I'm psychic. I don't think I am, but it's just this internal sense of something's off, or like everything's fine. I don't, it's basically something that helped me survive, and that's right now serves me a lot in my work with clients, because like I can sense the things that aren't spoken. Like I can read between the lines, not in some crazy way, but in terms of, okay, there seems to be something more than what you're telling me. Like like I can sort of, something happens inside of me. Like I'm sure that people who experience the same kind of environment when they were growing up, they can resonate with the fact that you somehow know, you feel it. It comes from within. It's not so much a cognitive awareness as it is a somatic one.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. I have that same thing. And there's a lot of ways that we could think about it, right? We could call it neurology. We could talk about the sensitivity of the system and the environment we grew up in, right? But ultimately, from my perspective anyway, is that we're really all souls, right? We're all spiritual beings having a human experience. And often we're tapping in to those parts of ourselves that are greater, that are more, right? And when we tap into that in the world, it can kind of look a little crazy, right? Like, how did you know that? But if you think about the identity of who we actually are at our core, I think it makes a lot more sense. One more term for grounding out, let's talk a little bit about safety. And in the context of healing, what does it actually mean to feel safe in your body?
Yeah, it's not the safety in the conventional sense, right? It does sound kind of fluffy and ChatGPT like, but it's actually like the basis of healing. Like healing doesn't happen unless you feel safe. Anything, re-traumatization happens when you dive too deep too quickly, when your system isn't prepared for the challenge you wanna face. And so basically, as I said before, because your nervous system is constantly scanning for danger, it is more like this internal state, this cellular level of safety. Like, does your body's system perceive that you can let go of all your coping mechanisms, all of your protective strategies, or does there seem to be any danger? So it's a physiological state, not something that's happening cognitively. You're not aware of it happening. It happens below the level of your awareness. So, but for a lot of people, like it starts with feeling. And a lot of people, the coping strategy is to be in their heads because it doesn't feel safe to be in their body. So they're a lot of times not even aware what's happening. Like, how does that feel? They don't even have words for what's going on below the neck, I like to say. Because and even we even live in a society that is like everyone's like, I feel like there's a hamster spinning in people's heads, like never running out of energy, because it's just nothing happens up there. Like I had this realization when, obviously, as the majority of people, I started with CBT, because like that's the first thing. Okay, I have a problem, I need a therapist, right? But then I soon realized that, okay, now I had the awareness, but I still couldn't shift my behavior. So, on top of the fact that I was already sad that I couldn't set a boundary, I was also ashamed because, like, what the F is wrong with me? Like, how come, like, if other people can do it, what is wrong with me that I can't? It simply, excuse my language, fucking hurts to set it. I wasn't able to hold it. And I was like, there must be something more than this. Like, and yeah, it all comes back to safety. Until I didn't care about the other person and how they might react, how they might accept or not my boundary, or like, or if I in any way doubted that I deserved to have that boundary, then I couldn't hold it. I was the first one to step over. Like, because the pain of going against myself was less intense than the pain of holding the boundary, as weird as it sounds, right? So part of what needs to happen, because we learn unsafety in relationships, like the first step to starting create this safety is to be held in a compassionate relationship with a properly trained therapist or a practitioner, where they mirror you this safety. Like, even when we were little, like, a lot of people can visualize this, but if a 3-year-old is having a tantrum, he needs a parent who is emotionally, I can download the word, who is
Available?
regulated in, yeah, let's say available. Yeah, who is regulated enough so they can help regulate their nervous system. So we learn by co-regulation. And it's the same when we're adults. When we lose it, when we become overwhelmed, we need someone else's nervous system that's anchored in the here and now while we experience something heavy, something challenging, something sad, frustrating, whatever. Or when we visit the experiences from the past that still upset us today, right? So it's this, the safety is learned in a relationship in this small titrated doses of, okay, this, I didn't die here. Like, it's okay, I survived. But I am really talking about like small things in life, and like baby steps even, that we begin to cultivate this safety. So this is when your system basically let goes of every protective behavior, and like it's just safe to be you, just the way you were born to be. How is this landing with you?
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for grounding that out for us. I'd love to talk a little bit about your story in your own words. Tell us a little bit about what your early experience looked like, how it shaped the way that you related to yourself and others. I know you did share a little bit about this already.
Yeah. Well, I grew up in an environment where there was a lot of emotional and physical abuse. Like, growing up in an environment like this, you basically have to survive this environment, and the easiest way to do that is to abandon yourself. Not consciously, of course, but like, if you're never good enough, if you're never enough, if you're always too intense, too much, too loud, too whatever, like, you learn to, like, okay, how can I behave so that like they love me more or leave me less? You, like, even as a little girl, like, you stop being yourself and you try to be as small as you can be so that it is less painful for you. So yeah, it started very early on. I wasn't aware of it until I was, I think, 20 years old, when I started dating. And I realized that I'm always attracting partners that are emotionally distant, that are narcissists. And I think I came across a book, and when I read it, I was like, for the first time in my life, I realized that I'm part of the equation. It's not just them, it's me. I'm somehow attracting those kind of relationships. And in that moment, I started seeing a therapist, and I have been seeing one ever since, simply because at that point I chose that I don't want to have future children that would have to heal from me, and that I don't want to attract another narcissist. And like, if I'm somehow participating in attracting them, then I must be the solution as well. So if I change, like, the people I attract into my life change, right? And yes, how it was like. So I started with CBT, but I soon realized there must be something more than that, that like, my life's too short and I still want to live it. I don't want to spend the rest of my life in therapy. I want to feel the joy and all of that, because basically I carried the, I think at the time it was still undiagnosed, and it is to very this day, because it's not actually depression and anxiety; it's CPTSD. But I don't think it's recognized in my country. I don't even think my psychiatrist like knows about it, because like it's something new. Like, we just started talking about it, and it's hard to recognize because it's with big T traumas like accidents and like when your bodily integrity or actual safety is in danger, it's hard to recognize. Like everyone sees that something traumatic happened to you, but when it's repeated and when it's small and when it's happening over long periods of time, it's actually like death by a thousand cuts, and people usually don't recognize it. You don't even recognize it yourself because like other people have it worse. Like nothing's wrong with me. I had a decent childhood, blah, 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 right? But it is actually like those small, repeated, painful, emotional events that create wound just as heavy as a big T trauma, if not even more, because it's like thousands of situations where you were not good enough. It's not one time when. And even I, as a practitioner, can say that it's very much easier to treat someone with something that happened once, even if it was big, than it is someone who has experienced this for 30 years of their life. Like it's like dying on installments, if I may say so. So then
Yeah,
at some point,
I heard a few things. So you pointed out how you saw yourself as a problem. But one thing, the part that people don't typically get to is the next part that you said, which is that you realize that if you were part of the problem, that translated directly over to, well, then I'm also part of the solution. And that's empowering when you can realize, well, I'm driving this thing. I don't have to go that way. I can go this other way. And you're absolutely right. I mean, even where I live in the United States, I think it's an underrepresentative um, topic. I have experienced complex post traumatic stress disorder, which is what she was talking about when she said CPTSD, complex post traumatic stress disorder. So we're all familiar with PTSD. People associate that with like soldiers or maybe like a assault or something like that. Complex PTSD isn't just one event. Okay. So people that experience this complex PTSD, they're having multiple traumas and situations throughout their life that their consciousness really has a hard time being in the world with. And it can have a lot of things like flashbacks, avoiding certain scenarios, avoiding certain people or places, lots of anxiety, lots of depression, all of those things, sensory issues. Like the list is pretty long. So if there's some of you out there that are hearing what she's having to say and you feel like, oh gosh, that sounds like me, I encourage you to do some information seeking, learn more about it, not so you can give yourself a label. Okay. I want you to do this so that, like she said, we don't just look at the problem. We go, now I know what's going on. And that directly translates into now I know what I can do next. What stands out in stories like this is that many people learned to adapt in very intelligent ways. The body is smart, the nervous system is smart, reading others, staying small, prioritizing safety. And those patterns begin as protection. You shared a phrase that I think is particularly powerful. Thoughts are the language of the mind, and feelings are the language of the body. Can you expand on that?
yeah, definitely. Yeah, as I said, feelings are the language of the body, and we rarely go beyond trying to understand everything. Like we're so conditioned that we have to understand why, but nothing really happens when you understand why. Like even the work, even EFT, when I started doing EFT, and get back to like why feelings are the language of the body, because for the first time in my life I wasn't asked to bypass my pain or to override my emotion. Especially as someone who grew up in such a dysfunctional family, there was a lot of like even grief for the parents I never had, a lot of sadness that I wasn't able to express, or my sadness was like instantly reframed into something like, well, they did their best, they didn't know any better, like this is how their childhood was like. Well, I don't give a shit. I'm sorry, but I'm here for myself. And with EFT, for the first time in my life, I was asked, like, but how do you feel about it? And I was mad in that sadness. And how does that sadness show up for you? Like, I just really feel this tension in my chest, and it makes me hard to breathe. Like, this is the level of awareness you want. And this is how your body speaks. Like, I was anxious. I was depressed. Like, I have a, let's say, official diagnosis, even though it's just a label. But like the body does speak. We're just not used to listening to it. So, like, and it does whisper in the beginning. It doesn't start to scream. But if you ignore it and ignore it and ignore it for longer periods of time, then yes, of course, something bigger happens, like to force you to like see that there's something beyond just your conscious mind. So yeah, even like the body does speak. How like I've experienced it many times myself, that there's this heaviness before I know what this heaviness is about. And I always trust the body more, because it's the mind that lies and that makes up stories, not the body. The body just like there's this sensation, and you can either tune in and ask yourself what this sensation is about, or you can like make up stories. But in my experience, those stories never got me anywhere. But listening to my body, that took me very far from basically not having a sense of self and like building my self worth from the ground. This is, I think, the power of listening to your body and tuning in and asking yourself, like, why do I feel this way? Like, what was the trigger? What happened right before I started feeling this heaviness? When have I felt this way before? Does this situation feel in any way similar to anything I've experienced in the past? Like, really approaching it with this childhood curiosity of, like, what is my body trying to communicate? If this heaviness had an emotion, what would it be? If it had words to say, what would it say? Like, really, it can really be super easy. I don't think we humans are just overcomplicating this experience. Like everything has to have a meaning. And like, yeah, it just pause and like tune inwards for a moment and go from there.
I think part of the problem too is that when we're disconnected from that emotional language, from the signals that the body is giving, it can almost make you feel crazy. And
Yeah,
all of the outside world will go right along with you and say that you're crazy, even though you're not crazy, right? It's just that you're disconnected. And so you're not able to see the full picture. It looks like pieces of a puzzle, but they're like all in these different places when really what you're describing, that understanding, that embodiment with that emotional language and the really being present and the awareness there, right? That's an integration.
yeah. And it happens over time. It doesn't happen that like, especially with trauma and like with early childhood experience like I had, like there's like your window of tolerance is really super tiny, right? And like with small titrated doses of, okay, I have resolved this situation that I felt sad about, I have resolved this piece that I was still grieving about, like small small proof that like your body is safe here and now, and it's okay to feel it, it's okay not to be okay, that slowly expand this window of tolerance, so that like in the end, not I won't say in the end, there's no such thing as an end when it comes to healing, but let's say like over time your window of tolerance is expands and you have more capacity for more pressure, more fear, more like you, it just means that like this fear or whatever you're experiencing won't pull you under. You'll be able to stay aware of the fact that, okay, there's some fear. What is this fear about? What is my body trying to communicate with me? Like, what is the thing that it's trying to keep me safe from? Like, it doesn't overwhelm you as it does, like, when your capacity is very small, when everything feels like too much. So, and this pool is built over time, of course. It doesn't happen overnight. As just as you didn't like lose yourself overnight, you don't regain your power in one tapping session or one whatever.
Yes, that's a really important distinguished point, is that this isn't like we do one thing and, oh, we're all better now. This is like a commitment to yourself, that ongoing process of doing the next thing and putting the next foot in front of you, right? And from a nervous system perspective, when safety isn't present, the body prioritizes protection over connection. So many people will feel numb and overwhelmed, disconnected, and they don't really understand why. Why do you think safety is the foundation before insight, strategy, or action?
Yeah. Yeah, as we talked about, like there's this window of tolerance, and like whenever you're outside of it, you're either on this side where everything feels like urgency and panic, and I must do this and I should do this, and like overthinking over everything with over, and or this other side where you just feel disconnected and tired, and like you delay things, and like there's a lot of procrastinations. Those are both signs of nervous system dysregulation. And like when you bring your body back into this window of tolerance within which you are able to think about like what's happening, how do I want to respond, like what is this trying to, like why is this happening, this is when change can happen. Because in the overwhelm, the body has its protection mechanisms up, and it will just get re-traumatized. So safety is important because like we can only heal in safety, not in unsafety. I'm just trying to find the words how to like the most simply explain how and why this happens. Because think of it like when you're overwhelmed, when you're stressed beyond your capacity to think, like it's hard to even know what's happening, like what your next step should be, sometimes even like where you are and what you want to do, like really, because your prefrontal cortex isn't even online. Your body is designed in a way that like it's ready for fight or flight. So before we can implement something new, we have to settle down and give your body proof that like nothing actually dangerous is happening. We're just like our body simply remembers something. And when we can bring body into this more regulated state where we are activated, but we're still present in the present moment, we are not like pulled into that past memory where something emotionally heavy happened. We are still here as a witness. That's when we can hear like what's the wisdom behind it. That's where those cognitive shifts can happen, where we can basically experience it ourselves, like the maybe a more neutral perspective to this original event that felt overwhelming before. This is when we decide, okay, they really did their best. They really didn't know, have other experience themselves. But it comes naturally when this emotional charge is resolved, when our body is more grounded. That's when we get to choose how we want to react and what our next step should be. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, it does. Let's talk a little bit about EFT. I think there's some people that probably are familiar with it, but there might be listeners out there that have never heard of EFT. How would you explain EFT in just a very simple and accessible way?
Yeah, it's a body, mind, and energetic tool all combined. It's about putting pressure on certain points of the body while thinking about something challenging, and having this awareness of what's happening in the body or emotionally. So that is how we like cover all the mind and the body. So the felt sense in the body, the emotional sense, and like the meaning we're giving it. So this is what like melts the resistance. So it would usually look like, even though I feel an emotion that's challenging and I feel it in my body, thinking about something, an actual trigger, it should be very specific. Um, let's say that I was stressed before we pressed record, and like that would be my sentence, even though I'm afraid of, and I feel it in my chest, because like in a few moments she will press record and that's it. Except that I feel this way. Just to give a very like plastic example, because I don't like to, because like then people can interpret it themselves. But it's like a very specific thing that like it has to be as small as if you just pressed pause on the TV, like who's there, what's being said, what is your mind focusing on? Is it how it's said? Is it about what? Is it the person who said it? Like, what is really the triggering thing? What is the thing that triggers you the most? So that's the thing you want to work on. And basically, when you tune in and when you start tapping, a lot of times your body releases a memory, or like it's either like there's either a physiological shift that happens, like this heaviness goes away, or like an emotion shifts, like from anger to sadness, from sadness to disappointment, from disappointment to maybe nothing anymore. And you basically end with a more neutral perspective to the original event. So if something felt like I couldn't do this, it might feel more manageable after tapping. Or like you might feel like, okay, I could do this. I maybe still am a little bit scared, but it's not the fear that like pulls me under. It's not the overwhelming, I cannot move kind of fear. It's just, okay, I'm doing something for the first time. Of course, it's scary.
Often see is that insight alone doesn't shift the patterns. The body has to be included in that process. And that's where that somatic work can become so incredibly powerful. Let's move into identity and self worth. After years of disconnection, what does it look like to begin reconnecting with authenticity?
Yeah. When you ask that question, do you mean like what is it like for me now that this connection is better, or like what's the process it took me?
You could answer that however you feel so moved to answer it. So whatever way, the first way you interpreted it when you heard those words are exactly how I want you to answer it. There's no right or wrong.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Let's start with what it takes. It takes, like as we said before, meeting the parts of yourself that are still hurt. Basically, like if you think of your past and there's sadness or anger or any kind of emotion, there's something for you to explore. It usually comes with something felt in the body. Although a lot of times when people start doing this work, they are still in their heads and cannot feel anything in the body. And that's okay. When I started doing this work, I felt nothing in the body. Like the zero, zilch, nada. And like after doing it for so many years, like now I feel it everywhere and I feel it shift. I can give it metaphors. I can explain. I can like even, yeah, see it vividly. But like it is also something that gets developed over time, but it's really meeting all parts of you that were abandoned. So the parts that weren't welcome elsewhere, even like the thing, the grief, the anger, everything. So it's a lot of times we notice the symptoms that are showing up in our daily life. We don't really like go through our life and, okay, unless if you're me, because like now everything I experience gets filtered through this EFT lens and trauma lens, and like I already think about, okay, like where does this stem from? But let's say that people often start with something that's right now challenging. Start with that. How do I feel about, I don't know, going to work tomorrow? I feel it feels heavy. I don't want to go. Yeah, start with that. Start with that's the power of this work, starting with where you are. So, what's challenging for you right now? And when you start tapping on your current experience, like your body will take you wherever it needs to go because it knows what it's connected to. You'll either have an insight or a memory that will come up during tapping, and just trust that your body knows and that it will take you there when it's safe to go there. Because a lot of times, even when I started my own journey, I didn't even remember my childhood. I didn't even know it was traumatic. I didn't know it was CPTSD. I didn't know that it was basically physical and emotional abuse. I thought everyone was having it this way. And I simply started with, okay, this makes me angry, this makes me sad, this makes me frustrated about my job, about my business, about my partner. It started in the present moment. So and then I slowly built this capacity and this window of tolerance to go back into the more root cause, the realm of the root causes. Like, when did this pattern start? Like, if I trace it back, does this remind me of another time? So it really is about this curiosity and like creating the room and really going as slow as the slowest part of you feels safe to go. And really here you can simply trust that like you're being presented with what you're able to process. Like your body won't give you an anger you're not able to process. It won't release a memory that might put you under. Like if it's not safe, you won't remember. I didn't remember half of my childhood because it wasn't safe to go there. And you can simply trust that, like, whatever it is that's going on for you right now and that's frustrating is where you start, is the doorway.
Absolutely. Something I see often, people, they might understand what needs to change, but their body hasn't caught up. And that gap is frustrating. And, it's actually part of the process too. A lot of people forget that. As we begin to bring this together, I'd love to just reflect a few key ideas that trauma isn't just about what happened, but how it was experienced. That safety expands our capacity to heal, and that understanding something is not the same thing as embodying it. And I would love for you to offer our listeners a micro practice invitation, something tangible and simple that you would recommend for them to practice every day over the next week. What would you recommend?
Yeah, there's a practice that I absolutely love because it's super easy and easy to remember. But it's basically, it goes like this. Think of something good for you, something that you'd like. Like, would you like to go to Greece for 2 weeks and like lay on the beach and tune into your body, notice what happens? How does it feel? Is there warmth? Like, do you feel any expansion, warmth, ease? How does a yes feel for you? And then think of something that is clearly wrong or off for you. How does that feel in your body? And just play with it. It's super fun. And you can start with simple things. Would I like an apple? Yes or no? Would I like to go for a walk? Yes. Or like, would I like to cut my hair short? No, I wouldn't. Like for me, it feels like it's either expansion and I feel my stomach shrink or expand. That's how I feel it, but that can be very personal, so everyone can experience it in their own way. But it's a fun exercise to do and very simple. You can do it like while you during your day, like many times.
Very good. And I'll have her send me a written part of that to put into the show notes. Before we close, one final question. If someone listening today feels disconnected from themselves or they don't know how to begin, what do you most hope that they remember about themselves after hearing our conversation today?
Yeah, I reflected on this question before, and at first I didn't know what to say really, but then it landed that it's okay not to be okay. What I mean by that, because a lot of people are scared of anger, sadness, and let's say, quote unquote, negative emotions, right? But this is the doorway. This is where you start if you want to shift the behavior, shift how you feel about it. This is where you should start. So don't be afraid of it. It's not an easy journey, but it's a very freeing one and it's all worth it in the end.
Ella, thank you for this conversation. Your work offers such a gentle and grounded reminder that healing isn't about forcing change, but it's about creating safety and allowing the body to come back online in its own time. To everyone out there listening, thank you for being here with us today. If this conversation resonated with you, you can learn more about Ella's work in the show notes. And if this episode supported you, please consider sharing it or subscribing to our podcast. That's how these conversations reach the people that need to hear them the most. I'm Dr. Sarah Young, and this is NeuroAlchemy. Remember this: you are not broken, you are becoming. Bye for now.